the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. Great. Feels very odd doing this on Zoom. Before we get started, I'll turn it over to Tammy to get rolling in a second. We have representatives of the school board and the board of commissioners, and certainly a big tip of the hat. No one gave you folks a playbook or a manual for how to handle this, and lots of decisions and constantly changing circumstances. So thanks for all your efforts. On behalf of this board, for both of your boards, and certainly Tammy, for you and your group, lots of changing regulations, rules, and whatnot for our park usage, and folks have kept up with it and are trying to branch out and do things on Zoom. And I know we're going to hear some of that tonight. And of course, all the folks in the township have been amazed at the efforts of our police and public works. And really, folks do all a great job on the best of circumstances. And certainly we're going through something that's not quite the best of circumstances. And I think it'd be remiss if we didn't at least say something here at the beginning of the meeting. A big tip of the hat to everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you for saying that.
All right. I guess our first order, we do the minutes, Tammy?
Yes.
Just hopefully everybody had a chance to take a look at the February 2020 meeting minutes. Do I have a motion for approval?
So motion.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Tammy, I guess I'll turn this over to you now for your report.
Okay, sounds great. Well, I did have a little bit of a more detailed report that I tried to send in advance so you guys would have a chance to page through that, just so I don't have to cover everything. It's been a busy 3 months for us. I mean, one day we were planning Wheels of Wayne and getting ready to open up Little League out on fields and ready to have the spring extravaganza, I think, the next weekend. And then the next thing you know, we were shutting everything down. So it was a very difficult time for Parks and Recreation professionals, as you can imagine. So it was a tough thing for us, but you know, we tried at first to transition a lot of programs a couple of weeks out when we were in the 2-week shutdown. So, you know, we tried to kind of keep kicking the can, so to speak, and pushing programs out and pushing some of the events out and coming up with some backup dates and backup strategies. And then, you know, realizing as this thing was starting to get underway that, you know, it was a much more serious circumstance than maybe what folks, you know, originally thought, or what we maybe have originally thought. I think we might have started out a little bit more optimistic. But we tried to work with vendors as best as we could. A lot of things we did have to cancel. Some things did transition virtually, meaning some of the existing programs that were about to get up and running. For example, our Soccer Shots program was about to get up and running with 125 kids in it. So that was a big one at Clemacrone. And they transitioned to an on-the-go format that was very, very well received. I think it filled a void for a lot of folks and offered folks the opportunity with a pre-recorded session to be able to continue to play soccer, whether they chose to do it with the instructor in their living rooms, in their backyards, in their driveways, you know, obviously accompanied by a parent, but it was something that worked. So they did a really good job at doing that and getting that underway. For a lot of the other programs, we did postpone, like we had skateboard clinic and things like that coming up that we tried to move out to summer. Like our basketball programs and things like that, we tried to push those out to later dates, you know, recognizing that now we're kind of dealing with the, you know, the situation of summer and how do we move forward. So it's been a lot of conversations back and forth with vendors, a lot of working together to try to come up with alternative strategies. And then, you know, on the immediate front, we tried to produce a list of like do-it-yourself types of things and activities at home. We had put out a document that was several pages long with lots of ideas and resources. We had gotten that out like the 3rd week of March to try to help keep people busy. Little did we know every other entity around was going to be doing the exact same thing, with a lot of that stuff coming about, you know, through Facebook and other different types of formats and what have you. So we tried to keep that stuff coming. We tried to keep Facebook posts relevant, provide do-it-yourself videos, things like that, that we were even filming ourselves, you know, just to put some things out there for folks. And then we really started to work hard at coming up with some new ideas on how to basically engage and entertain through virtual formats. So we had started out with a talent show that was very highly received by the residents. We had a lot of participation. We also, last night, we had our family Disney trivia night, which was an amazing success. We were lucky enough to get Nothing Bundt Cake on board, and they gave free buntlets to everybody who participated. To our winning family, they had received an 8-inch bundt cake, and then the second place family had received a 3-tier buntlet cake. So I'm not sure if they were really looking for something to do or if they were just looking for bundt cakes. I don't know, but we had great success. It sold out. We didn't charge anything. It was free. The interface for how we did it was through through live on Zoom. And then we also used another program called Kahoot, which I don't know if anybody's familiar with Kahoot. Probably the teachers are definitely familiar with that. I know it's used in the education world a lot. My son uses it for his schooling. But it basically allowed us to offer the trivia program, and it tallied all the scores. It tallied if you answered more quickly than another family, you got extra points, and it provided the interface for us to be able to allow them to select their choices. So we had different types of questions with true, false, multiple choice, kind of putting things in order and stuff like that. And families really had a blast. So that was a lot of fun. Next week we have a Harry Potter game night coming up. So we're going to be doing some different activities with that. Another one that was very well received and sold out. So we're going to kind of keep rolling these things out as much as we can. I'll spare you the details on some of the others. I know you guys got the report, and if you have any questions on the specifics, you can ask us. But we've tried to roll out some different things to make them available. And we figure as long as folks are receptive and interested, we'll keep doing them. It's really Heather, Tracy, and Lizette and I are running them directly, and serving as the hosts and kind of going through all of that and engaging with the residents. And like I said, they seem to be well received, so it's something we're going to keep doing. We also had held 2 town hall meetings with our day camp families, basically just to kind of educate them on where we are on our planning process and let them know, we are kind of ready for all the options as they may come at us, or we may need to move forward in. For instance, we are still contemplating, what in-person camp will look like. I think most of the planning is really focused on what might be at a park outdoors in small groups, possibly, if that's permissible, of course, depending on the governor's phasing and what have you. If we're in, come, the next few weeks, several weeks, when we really, then need to roll out the planning and tell our parents what we're going to do. We are still considering in our back of our minds what it might look like at the schools. But we realize that that's probably unlikely, but at this point, we haven't been told by the school district that we can't use the space. So, we're obviously going to be cautiously optimistic in that regard. We're also planning for a virtual camp that would be run in this type of a format that would be engaging, similar to some of the programs that we're doing right now. It's not the most desirable option, but if it's the only option, we definitely want to put it out there and try and put a great product out there for folks to give them an alternative. We recognize that we might have to run a couple of different options, because even though we might have a permissible situation to be in the parks in small groups, at the end of the day, we recognize some parents might not feel comfortable with that, and they might really want to just opt for, some type of virtual camp, or we recognize, nothing at all. But we did have this conversation with our parents. We had 2 town hall meetings on May 4th and May 6th, and they were very highly attended. We're actually doing another one next Tuesday for any of the parents that might have missed it, which only might have been like, I think maybe 10 or 15 families. So it really wasn't too much. And then we're also opening it up to the public. Although in both sessions, we did get a lot of folks that were not registered for camp who participated. So we got a lot of great questions. We got a lot of great feedback. We just kind of wanted to let them know that we're thinking of them. We have our staff engaged. They're ready for whatever flexibility they might have to be in order to have a situation where they can provide some quality of life experiences for the kids this summer.
Amy, can I make a suggestion as to the use of the school property? Right now, we're not supposed to be using school property for anything at the direction of the governor. Like, we're not even, we have very limited use even just for our staff to go in. So if I know we have a new director of operations, and I'm sure it's not on his radar that you guys use this during the summers. So it probably would make sense for Bill White to reach out to him directly and ask him. I think waiting for him to tell you one way or the other is going to probably be fruitless because he's so busy with so many other things. I'll mention it to him, but it probably would be better to have, you or someone else who knows in detail what you typically use, explain that to him so he can look and find out whether we can get the proper waivers, etc.
Well, I had reached out to Ken Batchelor already. He and I we have had dialogue about that.
Okay.
So I think Ken has kind of indicated he is bringing Bill up to speed, who I have not met yet.
Okay.
And
great guy, you'll like him.
Terrific, and that we will learn more when that decision is made.
Okay.
So I think Ken is kind of working through a lot of those pieces with Bill, and again, we're optimistic, but we are not planning, I would say, full speed ahead at the idea of having the camp at the school this summer. I mean, just to be realistic and what's around us, that's not where our core focus is right now.
Okay, no, good. I just want to make sure.
That sounds reasonable, Tammy.
Our core focus right now is on an outdoor type of scenario where there might be a small group of 25, depending on what the flavor of the day is, of course, in terms of regulations. I know those numbers have been fluctuating. We've seen 10s, we've seen 15s, we've heard 25s within the yellow phase. And we would make sure that, we're working within whatever that guideline is at that time with regards to both staff and campers. And we even went as far to geographically plotting out where all of our campers are from based on registration, so that we could make sure that the campsites are strategically located based on where they're from, so that they're either within walking distance or a nearby drive, because we've got great park assets on both sides of the township, really on 4 quadrants of the township. So we have a lot of great facilities that could be available to us. We recognize that if there's inclement weather, camp's not going to be able to happen. But I think at this point, if there is an opportunity where families can have their kids in a program, whether it's full day, half day, 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, we're looking at all those options to be able to provide, so that at least there's something where the kids can get out. They can do low contact type activities, low touch type activities, things of that nature, so that it creates a positive situation where they can get some exercise, have some fun, get some fresh air, interact with other kids. Even though it won't be our traditional camp setting, it will be something if in fact we can make that happen.
Tammy, how are the registration numbers versus previous years?
Well, registration was right around about 110, 105, 110 at mid-March, which was normal for us. So normally the bulk of our registration wouldn't come in until April, May, early June anyways. So it really was hard to tell. And we've had very little withdrawals. I think we've had 3 people who requested to be removed from the program. But on the flip side, ironically, we had about 5 people register. So that was kind of interesting. And some of those came like within the last several weeks too. So
Trying to be optimistic.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before too, we are planning for what virtual camp like this might look like. The staff is going to do a sampler on Friday the 29th of like a free opportunity for the camp registrants, just so they can see what it might be like. And we'll probably end up opening up to the public too if it doesn't fill up, just so they can have a chance to see, what would it look like, what would it be like, and also provide a little bit more information there so parents can kind of visualize that. So if anyone has any other questions with regards to my report, I know within there I tried to outline some of the activity of the parks department as well. I know they've been pretty busy, and in addition to some of the things they've been doing within the parks, they're also helping out with trash pickup. They're helping out, with a lot of different departments, just given the restrictions that we've had, and, trying to keep social distancing among the staff and keep the numbers back, so that you don't have guys, working so closely together. So they've been doing a really good job too of supporting on so many different levels within Public Works. So there's a lot there that they've been helping out with, and obviously with the park closure and then the park opening, there's a lot of communications there and signage and caution tape and all that kind of stuff that, they've spent a lot of time out there doing. And then, trying to keep up with the grass cutting too now, obviously, is a pretty big task with all the rain that we've been getting.
I would like to say that I've been down to some of the parks, driving around, trying to stay at home as much as possible, but getting out to save some sanity. And the work down at Philippone and Emily Tunnell is just wonderful. I'm just so impressed with, making progress where we are. I was down there yesterday for both places, actually, but it looks great. My hat's off to you again for leading this charge. I think it looks wonderful. That's all I want to say.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, we still have some work to do down there. We have a hearty punch list. There are a lot of things that we still need to address. We recognize the fencing still needs to come down in some different areas. There's also, we're going to be installing bollards around the front areas of the building as well, so that there's some safety measures taken in front of that area. I know, being over there this week and taking a look at that, we definitely are coming up with a plan to try and, make sure that there's not, you have cars very close to where, kind of the concessionary area is. You have, areas where the parking is also very close to the bathrooms where people are coming in and out. So we're going to be working on making sure that there's a safety buffer that's in and around that area.
Tammy, I saw that the fencing configuration changed a week or so ago. Is that just representative that the ground had matured, people could walk on the grass, in an effort to maybe give some of the folks in the neighborhood an opportunity to have some of the parking back?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm trying to try and quarantine those areas that still need to be protected. But by the same token, also provide ingress, egress for the park and more room to get in and move around.
And I know you mentioned a punch list. Other than punch list items, is that project pretty much done?
It is. I think we're in pretty good shape. I don't have a timeline on what the punch list is going to take to get done, because I know the contractor is, I believe, working on another job. And then we're kind of in this state of, when are they going to be able to start work for us again? And how are we going to, go about that? So I don't think the season is going to be opening quite, so soon. We're probably a little ways away from softball and some of the other organized sports, so we do have some time. But I know that as soon as we can get a timeline and get them through that, we're looking to close the project out as soon as possible.
Great.
Tammy, can you comment a little bit on Fenimore?
Sure. Yeah, so Fenimore's continuing to move. We continue to go back and forth with the contractors on a bid specification, like a final bid spec and design. So that is something that's taking, a lot of extra time, just trying to be, detailed and strategic there. I will say it's been a little slow with our consultants. I think they've been, working a little bit slower with, less time in the office and, trying to divide themselves among projects. So we're still continuing to go through that project. I know some of the state regulating agencies with, the DCED, who, regulate some of the plans for stormwater and sedimentation control and things like that. Some of those state agencies are shut down. So there's going to be some extensive time, I guess, if you will, to get through some of those processes. But I do feel pretty confident. I think it might work to our advantage, because right before we went into the shutdown, construction was at a peak in terms of costs. So it's likely that if we go to bid later in the year, it might work to our advantage, and we can get, a little bit better costs for, supplies and contracted work and things like that at that point. So it might help us out a lot better for this project, but it is moving along.
Thank you.
Bill, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I said thank you. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Sarah.
That's okay.
With regard to project updates, Philippone, are we done there, or what's left to be done if we're not done there?
There's a small punch list there. There is some grading on the parking lot that still is going to be reviewed. I know Steve Norsini is working with the contractor on that. There's some. Do you guys have an echo when I'm talking? A little bit?
No, it's irritating. Bill, Quinn, I think if you mute, it might help.
It's terrible. Is that any better? Okay, that's terrific, because I'll tell you what, I feel like I'm in Villanova Stadium here making announcements. It sounds horrible. So that project has a few remaining punch list items. I don't have the whole list right off the top of my head. I know the parking lot is one. I know one of the pickleball courts is another one that we want to make sure the leveling and everything has been pitched correctly. There were some areas of the tennis courts where there was a little bit of delamination on the surfacing. So I know we need to take a close look at that. So the plan is to get that project closed out soon as well. We also are going to be planting additional trees in front of the mulch bin area. They're between the mulch bins and then the island and then the street. So we're going to continue the trees on down a little bit further just to kind of provide a little bit more screening to that area. We also might look at a little bit of a reconfiguration of those bins just to sort of move that down a little bit, make it a little bit smaller, and also evaluate putting caps on those blocks that are there currently. They're not the most aesthetic. So we're also evaluating the possibility of painting and or staining those in some way so that they blend in a little bit more with the environment.
One thing I've noticed, you mentioned pickleball. Other than meat and I guess toilet paper, those portable pickleball nets seem to be the biggest selling thing in Radnor Township. I've seen dozens and dozens of driveways which have them now.
Oh my, I haven't seen
so
that.
perhaps we jump the gun in putting this into the park and should let folks create their own courts on their driveways. I'm totally joking about that, but it's obviously underscores the demand for the activity in the sport. Just seeing how many folks are doing it on their own in their driveways.
That's amazing. I haven't seen that yet.
Well, it doubles as a really bad volleyball net and badminton set too. So watch the trend there, Tammy.
It wouldn't be a meeting if we didn't at least talk about Sulpizio. There probably isn't any significant update, but I'll raise it just so we have continuity in terms of getting our reporting straight on that.
Yeah, the facility has been closed, as you know. And I think even if we enter a yellow phase under Governor Wolf's plan, it looks like recreation centers also remain closed during that particular phase. So I don't foresee the facility opening for any type of recreational usage on the horizon. I know the police department might coordinate having portions of the blood drive that can't be accommodated at the township building in that building. But that would be the only possibility of opening at any point soon with regards to any type of usage. And that's just in general with regards to the facility. I know that for those of you who don't know, I think you all probably do, but Bill White has been promoted to township manager. And I know one of the things we've been discussing, of course, we got hit by the whole COVID-19 situation, but something that's going to be on our forefront as we get back to normal business is to really continue to take a close look at that building and continue to provide detailed information to our commissioners so they understand some of the issues and situations that lie ahead with regards to improvements that are needed at that facility, and or evaluating just overall and trying to work with the school district on what the future could or should be with regards to that facility. We know that there's a great deal of costs that are going to have to go into getting that building where it needs to be, and it's something we all are going to probably have to put our heads together and start to discuss in more detail. And I know that's something that's on his radar and something that we're going to be poised to address soon.
Okay. Anything else, Tammy, in terms of reporting from your end?
No, I want to just take an opportunity to thank all the residents who, kind of called in, and, a lot of people have been opinionated in terms of the parks and, in terms of being open, being closed. We've heard from a lot of people over the last few weeks, or the last few months, I should say. So just, to thank those residents, for kind of keeping us informed and giving us feedback and, kind of being there along the way.
Yeah, I was thinking earlier today how ironic when we were meeting in January and February, we were talking about what type of a role we would play in generating more traffic and activity in the parks. And now, with good reason, now we're trying to almost pull back and do a 180 and control and try to balance public health with the use of the parks. It's amazing how things can change so quickly. I started at the outset with a general thank you, and certainly after hearing all the details and seeing the report, Tammy, thanks to you and your department, as always, for all the hard work and creativity you bring to your job. It's you mentioned that the township has great assets in its parks, well, also has great assets in its people in our parks department. So thanks again for everything. I'm going to go to Commissioner Farhi for a report, but I'm going to give him a question. I think it was something that developed in one of the email strings I saw, and it's really just a procedural question in terms of decisions to do the various things that have been done with the parks. I don't know that this board knows how the process works. I know some of the properties have school board ownership. I know if you could just take a moment and explain just the process, so we're better educated.
So a lot of that, and Tammy can actually probably speak better to that than me. This whole, I don't want to say township shutdown is not really one of the Board of the Commissioners. We are relying on our emergency management team, which is run by our manager, Bill White, our police chief, Chris Flanagan, Maria Carbonara, who's on the health side, as well as several other police officers as well. So we're leaving it to them. They are the liaisons with the state, with the county. I don't want to say with the federal. There's a lot of information on what happens, who's in charge. It changes every day. So we're kind of just listening to them, and they're the experts. And in a time like this, I believe that it's best that the board listen to the experts and not try to micromanage. Even though, like Tammy said, there are a lot of opinions. There are people, some want it open, some don't. But the board, and I don't want to speak for the board, but it seems to me that the board's prerogative is to listen to this emergency management team. So Tammy, if you could jump in and because I know that you're closer to the situation than me.
Sure. No, I think you summarized it very well. I think they, the Office of Emergency Management team is interpreting a lot of information. There's a lot of information out there. Sifting through those details and trying to make sense of them hasn't been an easy task. Just as there hasn't been a playbook to deal with this situation, there also really hasn't been a clear playbook that sits out there for how some of these observations, need to be made. And then, recognizing every community, of course, is different, all across the Commonwealth, let alone the country. So I think, our leadership has been trying to interpret, those sources that, are coming from the federal and state agencies, and, trying to make the best decisions that they can accordingly with the information that they have.
Okay. Thanks, Tammy. Commissioner Farhi, any other report from the Board of Commissioners? Nothing exciting going on, I'm sure, but feel free to.
Yeah, no, I mean, from the Ward 7 aspect of where I am, I guess it's looking like we're not going to have the parade, which is upsetting for Memorial Day. Has that officially been canceled, Tammy?
It has not. So the Memorial Day parade has been canceled itself, but there will still be a ceremony that's going to be held at the War Memorial on May 25th at 12 o'clock.
Okay.
A small group of veterans are going to get together, obviously social distancing, and they are going to read the names of the fallen, I think it's the 118 fallen here from Radnor Township.
Mhm.
And what we are asking, we actually just finalized the details today. So that's something that I'll share with the Parks Board after this meeting. So there is a flyer that's been put together that'll get circulated to the community. But what we've done is we've offered for the residents, if they would like to drive by the War Memorial at any time in the morning leading up to the actual ceremony, they're more than welcome to do that. They can drive by, catch a glimpse of the memorial, leave some flowers. I know the group would be open to receiving anything like that, or even just to see the support. And then the small ceremony itself will be recorded by Mainline Network, which is formerly Radnor Studio 21. And it's going to be rebroadcast to the community on Channel 21 after the event.
And thanks. And one more thing. At the last Board of Commissioners meeting, I do want to thank you, Tammy. I know that Tammy worked very diligently on trying to have a movie night out in the heart of Wayne. Unfortunately, based on the guidelines, where this too much is in the air, I think that the board kind of felt uncomfortable doing that at this point. Hopefully we can get there, but I just want to give definitely a shout out to Tammy and the rest of her associates. I know that they are working really hard. They know that people are getting extremely stir crazy, and they are really trying to throw stuff up against the wall. They want to see what sticks when it comes to activities and events that, you know, that are family friendly and we all can do. So unfortunately, that seemed to be, I don't want to say shot down, we'll say tabled for the time being. But, you know, at this point, I think any idea is a good idea, and we'll see if we can get it to happen. So, Tammy, thank you to you and the rest of the staff. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Farhi. Bill, your microphone.
Yeah, Bill, you're on mute.
I keep doing that to avoid the feedback issue and forgot to turn it on. I'm sorry. Thank you, Commissioner Farhi. Directors Dunn and Babson, any report from the school district?
I'm going to hand it over to Sarah.
I don't think we have anything terribly relevant to the Parks Department. I had a question related to Emlyn Tunnel. We've had some, I think some of them were raised, some concerns were raised in the February meeting. They've been raised directly with the district about the signage at Emlyn Tunnel and the concession stand, and then apparently some security cameras that are going to go on the building. And I'm not sure this is the place for discussing that, but I would just hope that that's all being addressed before the final installation of security cameras. There's some concern about whether that's going to affect people's privacy who live in the area.
So I'll let Tammy, I'll jump in. Sorry, I know I'm stealing your thunder, Tammy, and I'll let Tammy finish this. Let me say, there was an email that was sent out. I was not on the chain. I was so graciously got that email from, I don't know if it was the board president or from somebody else that sent it to me. From there, Bill White sent me, sorry, I have a little guy who's maybe making some background noise. Bill White sent pictures. I don't think the cameras were going to be an issue. I spoke to Steve Norsini. If there's any lighting issue, we're going to work on reflecting on putting a dome on that, and we can work on wattage. There's so much that we can do, but I've been assured that none of the cameras, when they go up, will leave the property line, and that's something very, very important to me, and I'm sure with the neighbors as well. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I get the concerns. The township is on it. Bill White is on it. Tammy, I know that you're on it, and I know that Steve Norsini, our engineer, will make sure that it's, you know, no one's privacy is going to be invaded. And I think you all know with me and light pollution at this point, I'll make sure that there's no light pollution going on. So, Tam, if you want to go ahead and finish it, that's I'll let you wrap.
Sure. Yeah. The security cameras, first of all, been planned to be at the building all along. So I think there were some accusations that was not, you know, part of the process, and there was some, I guess, I forget how it was worded. I think it was that it was opaque. It was an opaque process with regards to not only the development of the comfort station, but the security cameras as well. But with regards to those images are not going to cast beyond the site of the actual park itself. In fact, I don't even think they are extending into the parking lot too far, which I was actually a big advocate of sending them further into the parking lot, because you do have a situation there where you have people parking to access the train. You have residents that park there because Garrett Avenue is a very busy street. It's difficult. There's a lot of limited parking. Also, not to come from this end, but you have a park that's being primarily used by females. And, I think there should be a level of surveillance that's there, is to the extent that we can possibly do so. And like I said, that was something that was discussed all along. We discussed it at our neighbors meeting that we had, which occurred at the park, where a lot of you guys took part in that meeting. It also took place, we also discussed that at the school board meeting that I attended, and described, what was going on with regards to the project. We distinctly talked about surveillance cameras at that meeting. But as far as the legality of privacy, there's no privacy violations, because there's no properties that are being surveyed, that are being, the cameras are being cast upon.
That's great. And I just wanted to give you the opportunity to say that publicly, because I'm sure, where one person's concerned, a number of people may be concerned, and I wanted you to have the opportunity to share that with anybody who may follow up.
Sorry, yeah, Sarah, let me just jump. Sorry, Tammy. Sarah, let me just.
Okay.
So, I got an email from the manager, and he showed me where those cameras are going to be. He had someone stand up, and and Tammy's right, they don't reach the parking lot. If they do, maybe they reach one or two spots. They do not reach the property. I have that email. I am glad to forward it. Tammy, I'm sure, I don't know if you have those pics as well. I don't want to put you on the spot and have everybody email you to forward it, but
I've been on that email too.
I'm happy to forward that to whoever they want, especially, and I would have gone door to door in this time. Probably not the best idea, but I'm happy to forward that email to let them know what the anticipated coverage or radius is going to be of those cameras.
Let me just say, I think that having read the email and been on the loop with that, I think constituents have some very fair questions. I think we could probably all agree on that a security camera overlooking a public facility, I think we could agree that that's a good thing. It's a normal practice. It happens everywhere. It's good for insurance purposes as well. That really boosts the the chances that insurance will go through as expected. So I think it was a fair question, and I think that probably what we would just need a little bit more detail on is maybe some precise numbers about the radius, or just making sure when there's an adjustment, just making sure, just double checking that that the purview of those cameras only goes onto the public property. But yeah, I think that it's an important issue to bring up, and I think we had a good conversation about it.
Can I ask the signs? There were some back and forth about whether the signs to go on to Emlenton, the scoreboard, whether that was to be lit. And I thought the end result, I know what the facilities committee and the school board said was they're not supposed to be lit, but I don't know how that was resolved, and I apologize again for that was covered.
Well, first of all, that's not a township issue directly. That is a request that's been raised by Radnor Wayne Little League. So I think where we left that in our last meeting when we discussed it was they were going to go back and they were going to develop some renderings, and they were going to put together an overview with what do you call it, like screenshots of what they would look like in the park. I do believe those were electric lit scoreboards that would be illuminated. So perhaps when we see those renderings from Radnor Wayne Little League, we can get an opportunity to kind of see what that would look like. And I know we'll be requesting to see like what the model would look like. What's the sizing of it? How tall is it? How wide is it? Where is it mounted? That's a lot of stuff that we're going to want to see, because we know, the residents have inquired and, are looking to understand some of that information as well. I'm not sure at this point where Little League is in that process. I have to imagine for them, their concentration is probably trying to figure out when and how their league is going to even occur this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's not a project that's put on hold until next year, given where we are. I'm sure with funding, there's a lot of people who've requested refunds. And I'm sure at this position, for them at this time of the season and not even knowing if you're going to get the season in and maybe have to refund everybody or refund them in part is going to be difficult. But, I do believe those were lit scoreboards. They weren't, some type of a flip chart, type of, scoreboarding system. So I think everybody.
I know that was something the school board president was very vocal about. We had not approved lit scoreboards, and
That's correct.
I think she was under the impression it's actually not allowed under township ordinance.
Yep.
But I think that was also, as I recall, that was a commitment made to people in the community as well. I'm not sure it's necessary either if that field is only open. I mean, my kids both play softball and we've only ever played there during the day, so I'm not sure why a lit scoreboard is necessary. But maybe it's a matter of seeing it too and understanding, does it cast a lot of light or is it just electric so it can be controlled from the floor? But I think that's an important thing to make sure we all understand before anything gets approved.
Well, let me just jump in. Sorry. So, and I did talk to Tom about it from Little League. I mean, if it's a lit scoreboard, it's going to be much smaller than what you'd see at Enke Field. So my guess is that they're allowed via the township. That's number one. Number two, it's not going to cast any light. Softball there's no lights to have night ball. So the amount of light that would cast would be none, so to speak, because it's going to be in the middle of daylight, if not dusk. So it's not an issue of lighting or a nuisance. There's not going to be sound. I'm correct. There will be no sound. So there's no sound pollution and there's no light pollution. So, and I want to try to be respectful here. It's a moot point. Maybe the school board hasn't approved it, but what the neighbors are going to say, if you don't want a scoreboard, then that doesn't cast light or have sound, then you're, a lack of term. It's like being a Grinch. Because my belief is that the boys, and I will speak for the boys, they have it great. They got a nice big snack bar. They have a nice big two big storage facilities, right, at Enke. Scoreboard, sound, you name it. And it was so difficult for us to get 2 bathrooms and some.
I'm excited about the bathrooms.
Yeah, no. But but I'm saying it was so difficult to get even a snack bar. And I don't even know if we're allowed to make microwave popcorn. We at least have hot dogs at Enke Park. So anyone that's gonna poo-poo a lit scoreboard, I'll just say, I get the neighbors what they want, but really shame on them because it's not going to have any bearing whatsoever on the neighbors. So I'll go out on the record and say that it's my ward. I'm all for hearing the flack on that, but that's really the honest to God truth on that.
Well, thank you, Sean, for those thoughts. I mean, as a Ward 7 resident myself, I've been hearing plenty about this here and there. I think until there's some actual model or some actual rendering of what it actually looks like, I think until then we're just kind of talking past each other. But I think just on the face of it, I think you could probably see how someone would think, oh yeah, a bright, lit scoreboard could possibly, be a visual nuisance or something like that, especially if you live in the apartment building just opposite of the field where you've got hundreds of people whose windows look out onto the field. So yeah, I appreciate more detail, that it wouldn't be super bright. But yeah, I think until we see an actual model of what it would be, and the comparisons with Enke are, it's not apples and oranges, but it's a very different neighborhood, right? I mean, there's a different surround there, right? Anyway, those are just some thoughts.
Yeah, no. So I get that. It's much smaller. I know that Tom spoke to the size of it and the amount of light. It's going to be LED. He spoke to that. I don't know if that was a one meeting. Chairman Renfrey, I don't know if that one was recorded or not. I know that one of them was not recorded. But I know that when Tom came, he spoke to the size. He spoke to the fact that it was LED and the placement. And I mean, you're right, Andrew. For all intents and purposes, we need to see where it's going to be. But from everything that he said, and I'm going to take him at his word. Maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. But for all intents and purposes, a 4x6 scoreboard with LED lighting at daytime is not going to cast any kind of light pollution. But in fairness to you, we'll check it out. I don't want a problem with the neighbors, but if they don't want it for the sake of not wanting it, that's the problem that I have. If it casts light or is, any way, obnoxious to the residents, or it's, shining light, or it doesn't fit the aesthetics, that's one thing. But it's a playground. It's a sports field. It was named after a pioneer, the first African-American to make the NFL Hall of Fame. It's across the street from his house. He's a war hero as well. Let's have a scoreboard and a snack bar and a bathroom. So again,
that meeting was the February meeting. It was taped and it was recorded. I was not there, although I did watch it. And I agree with Andrew that until we have a plan, we're talking hypotheticals. But just so I understand, the concern is a light pollution concern primarily, then potentially an aesthetic concern that's been raised.
I've also been told it violates township code. That's Susan Stern, our school board president, has told me that. She said that on record a number of times at school board meetings. I don't know if there's some split ruling in the code for regular light versus LEDs, but I know that's what she has said when it's been brought up at school board meetings.
Okay. And we can, as that progresses, once we get back to normalcy and we see some plans, we can certainly vet that out. And I'll certainly take a look at that. I don't recall any issues of that nature with the two scoreboards that actually Bill Quinn and I were involved in putting up over at Enki, but things may have changed or maybe a different split zoning. But I just want to get a grasp of the issue so we can address the concerns and make whatever recommendation we have to make whenever we have to make it, which certainly is not tonight or probably in the foreseeable future.
So just in terms of other updates on the school district facilities that affect the community, school district properties are still closed. The playgrounds, et cetera, are taped off. They haven't taped off parking lots. And I know some people I've seen using basketball courts and things like that. I think, we understand people may walk across the middle school property, but technically all of our properties are still closed. And that's not our specific instruction. That comes from the governor. All school properties are supposed to be closed. I don't know how that will change in the summer, if at all. And we obviously don't have instructions yet on the fall. As to our other facilities, we are, for now, moving ahead with the project at the high school. There are obviously concerns about the advisability of undertaking that kind of debt at this time for everybody. But the reality is there are things we need to do. It may be very hard to segregate portions of this project. We've asked our architects to talk to us about that. And for now, we're at least pushing ahead with trying to get, we approved our schematic designs for the project in the last meeting, and we've sent our architects have instructions to proceed with getting land use approvals, and then they'll proceed with other pieces of the project.
That's great. Well, thank you, Director Dunn. We are through our agenda, so I'll open it up if anybody on this board has any issues they want to raise or put before us and chat about. Certainly now's the time to do it.
I thought I'd bring up a couple issues. And I sent out an email about this, just kind of an open question about the chain of decision-making during this time of, an emergency. Talked with Sean about it a little bit, talked with Tammy about it a little bit. Just to gather some information, chatted email with you, Bill, a little bit too. But I guess it's interesting that our remit as a board is to advise decisions, and so it was just interesting for me to learn that in this emergency situation that we didn't have that remit anymore. In other words, when you declare a state of emergency, the Board of Parks and Rec doesn't have any real input on decisions about park use. I think it's a little unfortunate in a way, because it's probably the most consequential decision that we've made in a very long time. I don't know about ever, but a very long time, whether to open or close the parks during a pandemic. So, Tammy and I were talking about it, and I think, she saw my point that perhaps there could be just maybe an opening up of communication between the office and this board about decisions that are made. I think that, it would just be, I think, helpful and I could say appropriate for there to be more open dialogue. For example, I wasn't really even sure who was on the Office of Emergency Management. I know this structure has been in place in the township for a while. It's nothing new. But I think a little bit more transparency and more open communication would be welcome. I'm just curious if any board members have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with the communications, and what I can do is I can undertake to reach out to the chair, President Larkin, and just address the issue and the concerns, and see if there's a way to bring this board into the loop. Understanding, of course, as we've discussed, and we're in a context of unprecedented times and emergencies, and Commissioner Farr has suggested that even the BOC is deferring to certain folks, and not suggesting they're abdicating the responsibility. They're not doing that, but certainly this is a difficult time. But certainly, I think there's no harm in communications being opened up, especially since we have lots of folks that are representing various interests that sit on this board. It helps give some community input that otherwise would not be there.
Yeah,
so I can reach out.
Thank you very much. I mean, and I say that also too as a school board member that the school district and the township are two separate entities, and so each one has its own business. So I'm not really advocating for there to be more overlap there. That's an open discussion, but I'm not saying that here. But it just struck me as interesting that the school board, the district owns quite a bit of land in the township, and the township is basically a tenant of ours in some respects. So it's just, I'm putting it on the table. I'm not saying one way or the other how it should be dealt with, but just to say, I've had some really good conversations with Sean, and had a good conversation today with Tammy about it. So just putting it out there. Just if there are any thoughts now, fine. If not, follow up on email.
I had some. Go ahead, Sean. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do want to speak to. We had a great conversation, Andrew, and I get what you're saying, and I'll echo what Bill said. This is the first time, and hopefully the last time, that we ever have to do something. I guess, how I would respond to that question is that it's up to the police. We're letting the emergency management team handle this. And as long as we're in a state of emergency, they will handle it. It's not an issue of, it's like an issue of if a tree fell down. It's a safety issue. Two people that don't necessarily know if they have this disease that are next to each other could wind up passing it to one another. So it's just as much of a safety issue as if, a branch is about ready to fall on a Little League field. We don't know what we don't know. And I just believe that until we had a better understanding, the emergency management team said no. They have eased restrictions, as you know, but we're getting the township is getting our direction from the emergency management board, and they're the ones who are in touch with the county and the state. And I'll just echo one more thing. Delaware County does not have a health department. So on top of that, we have to go to Chester County, and we're like the stepchild that that we're just hopping on and trying to get advice from them. So we're not their primary goal. So It's not perfect. It is what it is. Again, I know we had that, and I know that it is frustrating when you hear all these mixed messages from residents, from government agencies, and from us. So, again, my apologies to you, to to everyone out there that have gotten these, but it's just, unfortunately, every day is something new, and we're just going to have to kind of make those adjustments.
Sure. I mean, if I may, there's a popular video going around that a friend of my brother's made. It's going around on the internet, and she's an actress, and she did this brief video, and she basically listed all of the advice that has been given by various leaders in this country about how to conduct oneself in these times. And she's a comedic actress, so I think part of it was a little bit of satire about the amount of conflicting information and conflicting messages. And you can't help but fault some people for just saying, you know what, I'm hearing this, I'm hearing that, I'm just going to go with my best sense of things. And I am completely sympathetic to that. I should just mention, though, that about 3 weeks ago, I sent a note to Commissioner Larkin and I think I copied the board here. I want to separate my opinion about these things with other issues. I personally don't think that parks should be reopened for various reasons, but I don't think that personal opinion should get in the way of a good conversation and a productive conversation about this. I think we can agree to disagree. I think also, does the Office of Emergency Management need 2 months to conduct its business? Was it made just for a kind of ad hoc, a flood happens or a tornado happens? So these are all issues that I hope that we can discuss more productively, more transparently. That's
just to jump in,
yeah.
The Office of Emergency Management really has been a strategic creation over the years, with lots of training and lots of research and time behind it. So, and I agree. I think we had a very productive conversation this afternoon, Andrew, on that. Obviously there's a lot of gaps that could be filled in for, not only maybe the school board or just, citizens in general, on what the duty of the Office of Emergency Management is and what have you. That of course is up for, discussion with the township manager and, obviously in discussions that will probably happen moving forward. But just one of the things to kind of point out, I was remembering back to one of the things I learned in my training, because all the staff was actually supposed to take part in a incident command training. Of course, I was in the 100 level class where, a lot of the police people were in the, 5 and 6 and 800 level classes. But one of the things I did learn throughout that I remembered after our conversation is that part of the success of a strong incident command is not muddying its waters by lots of influence and lots of opinions and lots of, outside, political input or, opinion, and things like that. So I do think the Office of Emergency Management has been productive for the township in that regard, because it is hard to make decisions when there's too much information. I feel it in our own field. I've been seeing things come from Pennsylvania Recreation and Park Society where, they're trying to interpret what the governor's plan is for the reopening phase. Meanwhile, it's not even congruent with what the plan entails. So, which do you go by? Obviously, we're deferring to what the government has laid out and we're trying to make those evaluations, but you see a lot of these other organizations, trying to put their spin on it because, they want to provide guidance and they want to be relevant and all of the above. So no doubt that it's good to have open lines of communication and good understanding. Obviously, as school board members, the OEM affects you as a resident. So that's critical. So that's really important. But there's no doubt we can continue to work together. And as I had suggested, reaching out to Mr. White would be fantastic. And I'm sure he can fill in things, in addition beyond that. And I'm echoing again. Bill, you got to turn your microphone off.
Can I make one, what I hope is a productive suggestion? I'm torn about parks being open. It wasn't our decision. They are. One of the things I'm surprised the way the signage works. So I was really impressed. I walked on the trail, the bike trail that runs behind the Wayne Art Center, and there are regular signs posted, at entrances, but also even along the way saying, please remember it's COVID. This is not, you should be wearing a mask. There are great recommendations there. And then at Radnor Memorial Field, and I mentioned this kind of offhandedly to people before we started this meeting, I was there the other day. I counted over 40 people. There were 18 kids playing volleyball, lying on top of each other beside the volleyball court. There was a group of 17 boys, and I counted heads. I didn't say anything to them. I didn't, but I sit there and I go, at the trail, we're so good about putting up notices. You should be wearing masks. Please remember social distancing. And at Radnor Memorial Field, the sign just says no organized sports. Now, I'm not the one who did it, but twice this week when I've been there, someone has called the police because the police have been there, and the last time there were 3 cars and they were all monitoring and they're trying to decide, because the sign says no organized sports. So if it's a group of 12 girls and they all have cones laid out and they're carefully doing drills, but there's no coach there, is it not an organized sport? I mean, I think, and when trainers are there and they have equipment on the field that doesn't look like equipment that's usually there, and they're doing individual training for individual people, I guess my question is, no organized sports doesn't say anything about, please remember social distancing. You shouldn't be playing touch football or volleyball. It's hard for me because I feel like the messages just within the Parks Department are so different, right? We tell you on the trail to social distance, which I'm not saying people are necessarily doing. There was a horde of women with strollers, across the trail. But I think that it's different, to say to other kids at the field, well, it's okay to play just as long as your coach isn't here. I mean, that's kind of how it feels, I think. I think that's how they're all treating it. So, and I think just some consistency wherever it's coming from would be really beneficial to the community. Because I think the police, I even heard them saying, well, it says no organized sports. But I also don't think that's how most Radnor taxpayers want the police spending their time, is deciding whether to yell at a bunch of kids playing on a field. So I feel like if the rules were a little clearer, and maybe we're okay with that. I mean, my kids aren't allowed to go do that.
Right.
But
yeah.
I want to make a point about the signage, because I worked with Public Works to create the signage, and we had a very clear defined plan for every single park other than West Wayne Preserve and Fifth Ward Park, which aren't really parks as we know, on how and where that signage was supposed to go. So my take to that is, either there's signage that's missing that needs to be reported and we need to know about, then I have to believe that there's enough people, frequenting that park, just from a leadership standpoint, we should know that. So that's something we need to address, and I'll make sure we address tomorrow, because I can assure you that the message was consistent with the signage in every location. Those signs were
would be helpful
in every location. So we'll make sure. And then we went above and beyond over at Radnor Memorial, because we did understand that there were trainers showing up with, even 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 kids. And even though it's a small group, they shouldn't be there. Because on a normal day, they wouldn't be permitted to be there. That's a normal situation where somebody's out in one of our park sites running a business or running some type of private training enterprise. We don't authorize that. So I know those are items we've tried to address. We've gotten reports about Lower Merion Soccer Club being there, and the Conestoga football team, and the Haverford Boys School, and we've reached out to every single one of them, their athletic directors, any coaches we've been able to get names and information for, and we've tried to communicate. We went a step further with signage to put up barriers, not like a barrier with a sign on it that said no organized group usage. So there's a lot of blatant disregard that's going on up there, and it's unfortunate. We chained up all the goals. We took out all the nets. There's a lot of practices we try to do. We also allocated an officer.
There's a volleyball net staked into the field.
Oh, well, staked into the field? That's
sure looks like it. I don't see stands. It sure looks like it goes right into the field. It's the end closest to the toilets. And it's been there 3 days this week. So it hasn't moved. It's in the same
That's-
location.
We'll address that. I'm in Radnor tomorrow. That'll be the first place that I go to see, because if somebody staked that into the field, they've now ruined the turf field by doing that.
That was my concern, but I don't see like bases around the poles, so I'm not sure how they did it.
I'll check it out first thing in the morning. Again, my concern is just we've really gone above and beyond at that site, and it unfortunately has been blatant disregard. I know the police are constantly up there trying to do their best of balancing not being the bad guy, because they're not the police that are instructed to police this, but trying to keep people moving along. And I know we even had a detailed officer that was put up there for several days, last week, if I'm not mistaken, or the week before, to help with those communications. So I know it's something they're continuing to take a close look at. I can obviously bring the additional concerns and ongoing concerns back to our Office of Emergency Management and our township manager, and we can go from there. But, we need people to do a better job of doing the right thing, really, at the end of the day. We don't want to preclude recreation in any of the spaces, because, the governor hasn't told us to do that. But it's really a fine line.
Well, and I think there was some guidance. So, when you're still in the red, I think you're not supposed to have groups of more than 10.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, pretty easily being flouted there.
And
Also,
I
I've
think
seen pets on that field, which I didn't think was allowed.
Okay, they're not allowed there either. And again, with those groups, the police they're aware of the situation, and I know that they are to move those folks along.
Maybe that's one that
Yeah.
we need to carve out and take a little stronger stance on just closing it, given that the usage is improper in any number of ways. I've heard a number of complaints from other folks. As to Sarah's point, I've gone by it a number of times. I've seen the same types of things.
Absolutely.
It just seems like an unfortunate zone, which is trouble.
Well, just to bring up, I anticipate Monday night at the Board of Commissioners meeting, there's going to be maybe more discussion in that regard. I know Commissioner Booker has brought forward an item on our agenda that is to have the board vote immediately to open all of the township playgrounds for public use, which I believe is to further include all of the areas that are currently closed, like basketball courts and pickleball courts and tennis courts and all of those other things too. So that is an item that is on the agenda for Monday night. I suspect there will be hearty discussion on that, in this regard overall.
Mm-hmm. Just very quickly, as you were saying earlier, Tammy, I mean, there's all kinds of different advice flying around, but I have it from a pretty decent source in state government that, Southeast PA probably won't be in the green until the end of July. Now, that's just one person talking. It's, it's just an opinion, but, I just hope that everyone is imagining all kinds of different scenarios, that all kinds of different timelines. And I think that it is a challenge these days because you're hearing so many different things, but to just be kind of ready. I mean, it's hard as a parent, we're trying to figure out summer camp. And right now, I'm saying absolutely not. It's not even close to being appropriate. But I think, in the absence of, let's say, clearer guidelines, these decisions can be fraught with a lot of ambiguity. I understand.
Well, the other item, just to follow up, on the agenda too, it's part of that, is to provide an in-person children's summer camp for the children of Radnor Township, and directing the OEM to provide applicable safety guidelines for the camp. So that's another part of what Commissioner Booker is going to be leading in terms of discussion. So just so you're aware. But I recognize, and having a lot of conversations with parents over the last few weeks, there's a lot of people who are still very cautious.
Yeah, and the other way, it goes the other way too. I mean, people have been clamoring for things to reopen from a business point of view. Completely, very, very understandable. And everyone wants to get out and enjoy parks and such. But yeah.
I was going to add, just from an anecdotal perspective, I spent a lot of time on the bike and getting around the area. And I think our parks as a whole, from what I've observed myself, I'm seeing a better social distancing than you see, say, at our neighbors in Lower Merion. Some of those parks have just been far from social distance. So I think to the extent that we've raised some issues as to how much these things should be open, if they should be open, I think we're at least doing better from what I've seen than our neighbors with the format we have set up. You know, can we always improve things, of course, but it's a tough issue. You know, tough issue. If all of us were the people using the parks, we wouldn't have an issue. You could take all the restrictions off, but that's not the way it is.
Yeah, just real quick, getting back to, I think, what was it, Memorial Field, or a bunch of them. I know that and I had the conversation with you, Andrew, about it. I know that I believe it was Commissioner Abel spoke to it, and I had offline conversations with I believe Manager White, and our police are on it. It's just difficult to do. You know, I said, hey, you know, can they drive by every half hour, you know, when they're on patrol, just make sure it's, you know, it's a safety issue. It's a safety issue. To a certain extent, it's no different than like a downed wire. You can put up signs, hey, don't touch it, possible live wire. People aren't going to listen. So I wish we had the manpower to have somebody staked out there, but that's just not going to happen. So in the meantime, we're going to make the best of the resources that we have. But it's a concern, and the problem is it's a cat and mouse game, because if we close that field and we chained it up and no one would use it, it's like water. It's going to go find another hole to fill in. So that's just unfortunately how it goes. But we're on it. Maybe it is best that it is at this field because it is closer, and at least we know that it's there. So it's just one way of looking at that.
Andrew, a few moments ago, you said you had a couple of things. I wasn't sure if you covered them or not.
Yeah.
Or if there's anything else you want to add.
No, that's good. We're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything else for tonight? Okay. Tammy, I don't know if there's a portal for public participation or not.
I had reached out to Ian just to see if there was any information just with regards to access, you know, and all that. So I didn't hear anything back. I think the procedure is to submit any comments directly by email, but I don't have anything that has come my way, and there's nothing that he's forwarded over to me. So I don't think there is any at this time.
Okay. I didn't want to breach protocol. I did see
absolutely.
Sarah unmuted for a moment there. I don't know if you had anything
I was
else to
just
add.
going to tell Tammy I found a picture of the volleyball net that I did take this week. So I sent it to you so you can see what's
Okay.
been in use.
And I'll stop by in the morning too.
Okay. Well, unless anybody else has anything else, I guess we'll take a motion to adjourn and head that path. So I'll make the motion. Somebody want to thumbs up for a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? All right. And all opposed? Okay. Thanks so much, folks. It's great to see
Thank you,
all of
Bill.
you. Thanks for all your
Thank you,
participation
Tammy.
tonight.
Thank you, everybody.
Hopefully we'll be back in person soon.
Okay.
Take care, folks.
Bye.